watching the Ricky Hatton 24/7 gave me a lot of motivation. I was actually, to see that top level guys are doing the same thing. So I don't have a coin like Ricky Fatton, but I'm not shy about getting big.
Well, he's fighting 147, so a little smaller than you, and I think he gets up to probably 190, maybe around 200 pounds. So, and he's still awesome though. I tell you, he gets in there and he looks like he's drawn, but he still has plenty of gas. And you've never had an issue with that in terms of the gas tank?
No, not at all. Like I said, training full 8 weeks, and when we say we're at 180, it means we're a little bit heavier. But
there you go. It's like a chick. Don't ask the weight.
Exactly. But for the most part, starting your training and carrying that weight, it probably gets you in better shape. It's like running with a weight vest for the first few weeks, really. So by the end of it, I'm jumping higher, running faster, things like that. So it works out for me.
So where are you now in terms of career? Because I'm sitting there cage side. I watched that fight. Even fight against Sean Shirk. This is one of the top 5 lightweights in the world. Then the next fight, they throw a guy who I don't think a lot of people know. Now, I watched the fight against Stevens, and he looks like he's a pretty capable fighter. But for you, from a mindset standpoint, you get to roll with all these great guys at Extreme Couture, and then all of a sudden you're fighting a guy who's only got one fight in the UFC.
He's only got one fight in the UFC, but he's, as far as I'm concerned, I think he only has one loss, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what really provides the challenge. I looked at some of his fights on the internet and other organizations, and he's a game fighter. He likes to fight. That fight with Jeremy Stevens, he was dominating him on the grappling realm, and for the most part, was moving forward in the beginning of the fight and wasn't scared to get in there with somebody who's known to knock people out like he did. So he's definitely a game opponent. I don't really look at the name. I don't look at the name as much. You just got to focus on the fighter at hand. So whether it's Sean Shirk, whether it's Rafael dos Anjos, I'm going to train to fight that fighter.
And it's an awful mistake to overlook a guy. And I'm not saying that Koscheck overlooked his opponent, Thiago. Maybe he did, though. Maybe he let his guard down a little bit, because Thiago early on, his striking really did look kind of rudimentary, and anyone can catch you. They catch you with an uppercut and then blast you with another shot. They can take you out.
Just like you said, anybody can get caught. That's the nature of this game, and that's why you got to be smart. Like a lot of people like to say I'm a boring fighter sometimes, but you got to be smart in there. You can't just allow yourself to be open to get knocked out with one punch, and you see it time and time again. Guys getting knocked out with one punch.
So you mentioned the label, right? And some people are saying that you're boring or it's very calculated. Looking back on the Shirk fight, do you think that affected that fight at all? Was there a moment where you could have turned it up, you could have done something different to grab that decision and grab it from the judges? Or go for the kill?
Not at all, because, maybe my first round was a little bit more calculated and what we like to, what fans like to say is boring, but like you say, calculated. But, the second round, I turned it up and I landed some good shots. The third round, the very beginning of the third round, I landed a good shot and rocked him. So I felt I turned it up when I needed to, and that I controlled it when I needed to, and that,
Did you think you lost that fight?
Really sitting back and looking at it, I see why the judges think I lost that fight, and I definitely feel like I lost that fight,
Why did you?
Because he was more active with the punches. He probably threw more punches. Did he land the heavier shots? No. But at the same time, that's not what always wins a fight. So landing 4 or 5 heavy shots that hurt him is not going to compare to, maybe 20 punches that landed not very clean, but at the same time, it looks like he's more active. I'm landing 1 punch in a combination where he's throwing 6. So things like that, I definitely see why the judges had him winning the fight. It was just frustrating to see that one judge had 30-27. I felt like I won at least one round, if not, maybe 2. But
I thought it was 29-28, and I thought there was about a 9. I thought it was even going to the third, and there was about a 90-second stint, maybe from about 2.5 to a minute, where he kind of edged ahead. But it was that close. So what do you do going forward from here? I know you just express confidently that you don't believe you're a boring fighter. Do you change style at all, especially against a guy like this? And has the UFC come to you and said, hey, let's go turn it up. We want some finishes?
No, they've never said that, and that's what it comes down to. Is I've had I don't know how many fight of the nights. So obviously I'm not a boring fighter. Yes, I may be calculated at times, but I turn it up and I use my cardio as my biggest weapon. So not changing my style, but looking at the fighter at hand, I'm gonna definitely press the pace, because he seemed to get tired in his last fight in the later round. So I'm gonna press the pace early and see if if his cardio can compete with mine.
So what do you think of 155 right now? BJ went away for a little while and expressed interest in going up to 170. He winds up losing against GSP. I would assume now Dana White has said it. He's back and he's staying back. But what do you think the way the division's kind of been handled and the way BJ is kind of treated, promoting the division and talking about the potential opponents in the division? Do you guys feel a slight at all?
I mean, not really, because BJ is one of those guys that's known as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters out there, and you got to respect that. You know, he may not show up every day in great shape and things like that, so that's what's hard to respect as a fighter and as a potential opponent, things like that. But at the end of the day, the guy's got great skills in every realm of the sport, and you have to respect that. Just like anybody can get caught, BJ Penn can beat anybody on any given day. The whole weight class itself is there's just so many talented guys that it's hard to always decide who's the top contender, who's the second contender in line, and that's why you got to stay active and and try and get those fights with those names and bump yourself up and get in line. And yeah, maybe if I would have beat Shirk, maybe I wouldn't have pressed to get another fight so soon. Maybe I would have sat back and tried to stay in that contender spot. But with that loss, I got to get right back on the horse and start winning and start beating more guys at bigger names.
Am I wrong thinking that, looking from a distance, that BJ may be improving, may not be? I don't know how hard he works. That he's potentially opening the door for the younger guys, the other guys who are working and working and working and working. That gap that existed earlier may be closed pretty soon if he's not keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, very much so. You've seen it with other guys, not to really pick on names, but you've seen it with tons of guys that were champ that got passed up sort of with the sport. And
well, I think we can name some older guys. I mean, is that fair to say about Matt Hughes at 170, or fair to say about Chuck Liddell at 205?
Well, I don't know. You know what I mean? It just depends what they're doing in the gym. But at the same time, you look at BJ Penn, he's showing weakness, and one of his weaknesses is his cardio. So not that his skills are folding, because he's obviously learning new stuff. I mean, the guy, obviously stays in the gym and trains. How hard he trains outside of the MMA stuff, how hard does he push his cardio, how hard does he push his road work? That's where I'm seeing the weaknesses, and that's where these young guys are learning to really push, and that's what I've been doing my whole career, and I'm going to keep doing it more and more.
Let's get a couple comments on guys who are in the gym. Number one, some of the younger guys. Ryan Couture is not a pro yet. He's an amateur. Talk about him and kind of compare and contrast to someone like Junie Browning, who has pro experience but is certainly not a complete product. But you get to roll with both of these guys. They get to roll with you, I guess would be the better way to say it.
No, Ryan actually is one of the toughest guys in the gym. He's a quiet guy, but that guy's got skills. He trained for a full year, I think, and kind of before he decided to step in there to the pro class and really get down and take the next step and learn even more and build on what he's, the base that he had. So Ryan's as tough as nails, and I can't tell you how many rounds I've, hey Ryan, come here, I'm working with you this round, because he pushes you. He doesn't care who you are. He's just going to fight your body, fight who you are, and it's funny because you end up turning it up with Ryan, and at the end, he'll ask you hey, why'd you try and kill me? And he'll ask, did I earn it? Did I do something that hurt you? And be like, yeah, man, you kicked me in the body. That hurt. Of course I'm going to come back at you. So, that guy's a grinder. I don't know if it's the Couture blood or just his nature, but, you definitely got to watch out for those guys. And Junie, he might be a little bit the opposite. He's got tons of skills. He's actually a lot more skilled fighter than any of us probably would imagine, the first time he was in there. But, he's still young, Maybe that's where Ryan is more mature, a little bit older, but Junie's still young in the head, and he's just, those mental things and the mental toughness. He'll build that being at our gym, and that's just a fact.